The Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro are great phones on paper. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they have all of the latest specs that you would look for out of a good smartphone, and they also have a great camera. So essentially, this should be an easy sale for Google, and they have sold quite a number of devices, especially more than they have in the past. These phones, they really came in and they interrupted the market. They came in way lower than a lot of the competition. And you're seeing as a result of that, a lot of phone companies are actually changing their pricing structure for their phones. They're becoming cheaper, right? But having owned these devices for the past 6 months, I want to take a look at how have they held up. I mean, there's been some growing pains along the way, but how have they held up after 6 months? And where does Google go from here with the release of their other phones and hopefully other devices that we're looking forward, such as the Pixel Watch this year? Let's first talk about the wear and tear. Like, how has the durability of the device held up? I still like the design of this phone. I mean, I think it looks really, really good. There are some small gripes that I have with it that haven't changed since my initial review. I'm still not a huge fan of the glossy back design. I don't think that glossy glass should be on any smartphone. It's very prone to fingerprints, and this has been probably one of the few phones that I've had that has been so hard to hold that I find myself constantly putting it in a case. Now, usually I don't carry my phones in a case. I like when a company designs a phone that feels so ergonomic in the hand that there's no need to have a case. I'm still not a huge fan of the glossy back design. With as strong as the glasses are that they are putting on some of these devices, you should be able to carry it with no case. I typically don't drop my phones, so that's not a huge issue. The main issue that I've seen with this device over time, and this is even using it in a case, is the rails on the side have some paint chips that have kind of, I guess, degraded with time. And then also in the glass itself, I have a lot of small nicks and scratches that even when in the case, I originally had the original Google case that they put out, the recycled cases, which weren't very good. I still got a lot of debris under there, and it pretty much put a lot of nicks and cuts in the actual glass. So I'm not a huge fan of that. I do carry it in the case now, like I said, just because it's easier to hold, but also to try to protect it as much as I can. So not a huge fan of that, but overall, I'd give it about a B minus maybe in that department because I feel like it could be better. It could be better. Let's focus on the software. Now, this has always been one of Google's largest pillars to their design. I mean, it's one of the reasons that I use a Pixel device as my main daily driver. And in the past, the software has always been fast, it's always been fluid. You have Google's integration of its apps and services. And let's be honest, the Google Assistant is better than any other competition that's out there. So having that built into a phone has always been one of my favorite things about the Pixel. Then in addition, you have the feature drops that Google will release once a quarter, where they're constantly adding new features to the phone, unlike a lot of companies that are out there now. So that's a huge plus. But like I mentioned, there's been some growing pains, and with the software, 1 minute it's good, the next minute not so much. I'm actually currently running and back on the beta build for Android 12. I did switch back to the public build for April's update after running the beta build, and it was fine for me for like a day or so. And then it got really buggy. It started to slow down in a lot of the animations. I think one day it got locked at 60 hertz. So even though I tried to force it to 120 hertz, it simply would not go to 120 hertz. I restarted the device, still had the same issue. So that's not a good look. I know Google has worked hard to fix a lot of the issues with the Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro, but they're still pretty prevalent. And I know it may be for a small select few, but at this point in the life cycle of the device, a lot of people are getting pretty irritated, myself included, because there's so much back and forth every time there's an update where 1 minute it's working and then now something's broken. That's why I label this phone as slightly problematic, because on the beta, while I'm actually using it, it has worked great. Battery life has been great. It has been very zippy. It hasn't had any stutters or slowdowns, anything like that. and you need to unify that for the public build. I really hope that Google gets this solidified and fixed with the May update, because it just doesn't bode well for people looking to pick up a Pixel device in the future. And also, I know that they updated the camera app. That's been getting a lot of improvements. And the pictures and photos, like I mentioned, they're great. I mean, I love the way that Pixel phones shoot photography. I haven't found myself using much of the video capability outside of maybe a few point and click videos that I might do, because there's simply not a lot to work with there. I know that Google uses a lot of its AI and machine learning for the photography, and the HDR that they added, HDR Plus, I believe it's called, that they added to the video camera this year is great, but I need more pro features. I need more frame rates to be able to shoot at. 30 or 60 simply is not enough. I personally like 24 frames per second, and I want to be able to adjust some things in the camera. So I really want Google to please put out a pro version or some kind of pro app for the camera. But other than that, it's also been a little bit buggy lately. It's taken very long time to process some of the portrait photos, and I've also just had some weird glitches where I haven't been able to use some of the features of the camera. Once again, I think this is tied to the issues that there are with Tensor and Android 12, maybe not being 100% complete when it was released. I do think that this is something that, like I mentioned, it's not a good look. It's not good for the customer base to continue to experience this. I just want stuff to work. I just want stuff to work. Then they've also changed the vibration motor a couple updates ago. I didn't really think that it was a big deal when they initially changed it, but at this point where I am now, I do sometimes miss phone calls and text messages because it's so doggone soft that you can't necessarily feel it when it vibrates. I mean, I've put it down on a table and still sometimes have missed calls and text messages just because you couldn't really hear it or really feel it vibrating. Those haptics really make for great typing and just an overall experience with the phone. And I think they were great and fine before. Have no idea why Google changed it, and I really want them to switch that back. But that's been my biggest issues that I've had as of lately, is just software bugs, things that I'm willing to try to figure out, but I'm probably in a small percentage. Most people just want their phones to work without them having to download a fix or change different settings, things of that nature. For the Pixel 6 Pro at $899, I would not recommend this phone. The Pixel 6 at $599, I would recommend if we were not 6 months in with the Pixel 6a on the horizon, which I'll talk about in a minute, and the Pixel 7 coming out later on this year. I think that Google should reduce the price of these phones. I think that the Pixel 6 should probably be reduced down to maybe $549 and the Pixel 6 Pro $799, because you're not getting that much more on the Pixel 6 Pro than you are getting on the Pixel 6 that merits it costing a whole $300 more. You're just simply not. I do use that telephoto lens from time to time, but outside of that and the nicer, higher refresh rate on the display, you're not really getting much more in addition. So I think they definitely should do a price reduction, which leads me to the Pixel 6a, because if that is coming out in May or June, like the rumors are saying, you're gonna have a real issue on your hand. Because from seeing the rumors about the benchmark, we know that they are using the Tensor chip, the same one that's in the Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro. So there's not really going to be any difference in performance. And if it comes out and it's priced at $449, $499, it's going to be hard not to recommend picking up that phone. I mean, the pictures are still going to be great. The camera that it's using, I believe, is from the Pixel 5, which those took great photos. And outside of it being maybe a lower refresh rate, there's really not a reason for someone not to pick one up. I mean, their A series always does really, really well in comparison to their flagship series of phones. And I think a lot of that has to do with the pricing structure. So where we're at now, I would not recommend somebody pick up this phone. Maybe the Pixel 6 if you need one like right away. But in all honesty, I say try to wait for the Pixel 6a or the Pixel 7. But outside of that, I still like this device and I will still continue to use it, problems and all. But that's going to do it for this video. Let me know down in the comments, do you agree with any of the things that I've said? Have you been having any of the similar issues? If not, Let me know as well. Maybe your phone has worked great and you want to give Google a thanks or some kind of praise. Drop that in the comments down below. I'd love to have a conversation. But as always, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.